Welcome to our WP Educates podcast. This is Danielle Reynolds, and I lead our business development efforts here at Whitley Penn, along with hosting our Develop podcast. We had the opportunity to host a series of events highlighting the nonprofit industry and how different service lines work to add value. We have recorded those conversations to make them easily available to you. This episode focuses on our Client Accounting and Advisory Services group with CAAS leaders Irfan Dossani and Natasha Klebba. We highlight how outsourced accounting may help with best practices, how Sage Intacct technology could be beneficial to your organization, and how our group may help fill talent roles using outsourced solutions. Enjoy the episode and reach out to connect after.
Thank you, Danielle. Irfan, why don't you start off by introducing yourself, and then we can let Natasha introduce herself.
Absolutely. My name is Irfan Dossani. I'm a partner here at Whitley Penn, and I have the incredible honor of leading our CAAS team and our CAAS service line here at Whitley Penn. Since I heard Emily name drop her high school, I'm going to name drop my high school. I went to Arlington High School, and I'm a TCU grad, so go Frogs. And a proud and doting dad of a 16-year-old teenager that attends Booker T. Washington High School for Performing Arts in downtown Dallas.
Hi, my name is Natasha Klebba. I'm a CPA. I have over 20 years of accounting experience, which range between audit, tax, domestic accounting, global financial reporting. Then 8 years ago, I found my way over to technology, and that's been my passion ever since, to build accounting systems for my favorite industry of accountants. So when I first got exposure to nonprofits, when I started off in auditing, so I've audited nonprofits, I've completed the tax returns for nonprofit organizations. And then about 5 years ago, while I've been working in the technology space, I then started building systems for nonprofits, and it's been highly rewarding. I would say I'm passionate for nonprofits because they do so much good in the community, and that's where their focus should be. And when I see the smaller nonprofits struggling and spending so much time doing accounting work and trying to figure out how do they need to structure their accounting system, because it's really difficult to meet that government reporting compliance, that's where I'm excited, because I love accounting and I love technology, and to come in and to help those great nonprofit organizations streamline so that they can get back to focusing on what they want to do, that fulfills me. So that's me.
Beautiful introduction. As I hope you can tell, we believe nonprofits are the backbone of our community. We believe that when you are able to do the work you set out to do, the whole community is strengthened. And our goal really in this whole series is, how do we help you create and communicate clear financial information? Because we believe, and we are a little biased as accountants, that numbers tell a story. And storytelling is such a critical part of what you're doing. So let's get into some of our questions for this morning. So we've touched on this a little bit, but Irfan, can you walk us through what is CAAS and what does our team do?
Absolutely. So CAAS, as Danielle and Emily had mentioned, it stands for Client Accounting and Advisory Services here at Whitley Penn. It's really inside our firm, there's three distinct services that we provide, or three different service groups that we have within this. The first one's our outsourced accounting services group, which can do anything from full outsourced accounting department as little as you want. So think things like accounts payable, account reconciliation, transactional accounting, perform month-end closes, and financial reporting. The second layer of that is the technology services team, which is led by Natasha, and that is around setting up accounting systems such as ERP implementation work, using tools such as Sage Intacct and others, other technologies that automate accounting functions like accounts payable, sales and receivables, payroll, expense management, to name a few, just anything around accounting technology and its ancillary systems. And the third level of service that we provide under our CAAS team is controllership and interim advisory work. And think staff augmentation there, interim controllership, doing financial modeling, forecasting, project cleanup work. Really, they're a special projects team, and they come in and really perform the more higher level controllership type services and advisory type services within that group. So that is kind of the three layers of our CAAS team. And it just continues to have success as we build this service line out.
Right. And Natasha, why don't you explain what we do with nonprofit organizations more specifically?
Absolutely. As Irfan mentioned, there's three primary areas that we like to focus on, but not secluded to, such as accounting, reporting, and technology. Now, we typically start with an assessment phase. And during this phase, we're going to come talk to the people within your organization about what's working well, what are your pain points, or where do they feel stuck? And so a nonprofit may initially come to us and ask, can you help us with bill pay? That is the number one question I think we get. But we do more than just that. When we start talking with an organization, we can quickly uncover what is really needed. Now, do they need a better process? Do they need to add staff? Or do they just need a different system altogether to make it work for them? So as a deliverable, one of the first things we do is we first design out or flowchart out what is their current process, and so that we understand what their current state is, what are their people doing. And then we'll, as we talk to them, we'll design out what is their ideal state. And their ideal state may be something way into the future that they can't tackle on today. So we'll break down how to stair step it so it is palatable, where it's taking one bite of the elephant at a time. So we do that to help them out. And then we come across so many organizations. I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it or not earlier. So when we're looking at even technology, they'll create, so many customers have this chart of accounts that has a long flat GL account number that has so many segments. And so they're putting in all this meaningful data of what is the category type, what is the restriction, what is the program. So they're capturing all this data, but they can't really get it out in a meaningful, quick, easy way. So they're taking so much time and spending so much time breaking out that data and spending hours, days, weeks to produce reports. And so what we do is we look at that and say, where are you spending your time? Where are you using Excel too much? You know, Excel is a great tool, but are you using it for everything? And if we can figure out how can we streamline your system to have real-time reporting capabilities, then you're able to get consistent, repeatable, accurate, complete data. And that information is all at your fingertips. And we use technology so that we can get that quickly, accurately, and so that we can have that reporting information. The other area that I see is we'll talk to them about their accounting processes and evaluate their risk, or if they have any poor controls. So a lot of our smaller organizations, and truth be told, I did work for an organization like this, they may not have the staff to have the appropriate segregation of duties. So if that's a concern and you have concern about risk management, asset management, do you think maybe some undesirable practices are happening in your accounting team? Then we can help augment your staff so that you can achieve better controls in those accounting processes. We can help augment your staff and say, do you need us to code your bills or create the vendor so that you can have your appropriate segregation of duties so that your team can review that bill and say, this is a good bill. and somebody else can pay it and another person can do the reconciliation, so that we can help you get your internal controls and segregation of duties in alignment with your needs to minimize your risk.
That's so insightful. One thing that I think you've touched on is the number of team members you may have and how you work with really segregating control out. And as so many of our organizations need an audit to be able to obtain funding from grants or from loans, segregating duties can be important, and it can be really tough to find people. So Irfan, why don't you walk us through how we can fill talent constraints with nonprofit organizations?
Emily, that's a great question. We all are feeling, the pinch of finding talent in the marketplace. It's a real issue, and it's going to be a real issue for the foreseeable future. If you think about the for-profit organizations, they're short-staffed as well, and with their budgets, and they continue to pay more to drive up that cost of finding talent as well. So what that does, it starts to impact the nonprofit market significantly, because we all know that nonprofit budgets are not what a for-profit budget would be. And so being creative around how do we get the same accounting functions done with not being a significant participant in the labor market, especially now, it becomes a real challenge, and it's something that we could really help solve for that. So if you think about what our outsourced accounting team does, it's a great solution to augment that role in an organization. So a lot of times a non-for-profit organization may come to us and say, gosh, I just lost my staff accountant and my AP person. I need 2 people. Can you guys go do that? And in reality, what ends up happening is, like what Natasha alluded to, is as we go through the process of understanding what is it that we really need, a lot of times it is real staff, real people to go ahead and augment that. But it's also, if you couple that with technology, we can come up with a more efficient solution around how to fill that talent requirement that you may have. So if you think about it, it turns out to be extremely cost effective, and you're essentially paying for a task that you need done rather than a full-time person. So think if you lost an AP person in that example, we're not going to give you 40 hours of an AP person. We're really solving for really that task of processing your AP, right? Which could be significantly less compared to what you would pay for a full-time equivalent person. And then if you layer that on with having a full-time person that you have to also keep busy, you've got benefits to factor in, PTO, your supervision costs, it just starts to add up, and the value proposition for outsourcing starts to become a lot more valuable when you start to kind of put it side by side together like that. The other is that, whenever you use this for outsourcing, you will get at least a 2-person team, sometimes a 3-person team. So you think about the approach of always being on. You don't have to work around people's PTO schedules and things like that you would have internally. So, we take care of managing our teams and project managing and behind the scenes. So your organization does not miss a beat in what it needs to do. So think about being on 52 weeks out of the year versus having a 1 or 2 full-time people that you have to kind of work around their schedule. So it's efficient, and it's works beautifully.
That's great. We've seen that, all 3 of us, play out with so many organizations we work with. We've talked a little bit about augmenting staff, but there's 2 roles that I specifically want to talk about, Natasha. Will you walk through what a controller and a CFO typically do for an organization?
Absolutely. So for an organization, a controller is typically the person who oversees the accounting process, makes sure your accounting team is closing their books monthly, their financials are accurate and complete. They put together your accounting process for organizations to make sure that, and they're also responsible for training and managing the rest of the team. They're the ones who oversee the functions such as your accounts payable, your receivables, your payroll, your reconciliation. So they really oversee the heart of your accounting functions. They also, so your controllers typically report up to the CFO, but sometimes if it's a smaller organization, they may report to the president or the board. So they may even be asked to present financials at a board meeting. So they typically analyze some numbers and provide guidance on trends, what they're seeing within the organization or the industry as a whole. Whereas your CFO is typically owning your financial planning and analysis. They may be doing a capital raise. So they're at a higher level. They're typically setting budgets, preparing projections, looking at cash flow planning, tracking your metrics, your KPIs. And they really rely on the controller to provide meaningful analysis and complete accurate numbers to be able to present to the president and the board.
That's so helpful to hear. So in our role as CAAS, we do provide that full level of service up to a CFO. And I want that to kind of stick in your mind if you're having trouble solving for someone departing the organization, or what I've seen with a lot of our organizations, a tremendous amount of growth after COVID, as we kind of get back to what matters most. This can be a really interesting solution for you to think through. I want to talk about what value we can provide to an organization. And this is a conversation our team has a lot because we are only as useful as we can be valuable. And Irfan, I'd like for you to share a little bit about that value we provide.
Oh, I love this question, Emily. If you think about what our CAAS team, the approach, and you'll hear this theme if you haven't already, is that our value is really looking at being in a true partnership with your organization. So, think about starting off at the assessment phase, which is what Natasha mentioned earlier. And a lot of times that assessment is not just around your technology, right? The assessment is really around your people, your processes, your technology, and how you're functioning today. And, a lot of times it could just be, using what you have, and are you fully utilizing what you have to its full capacity, right? So we look at it that way as well. We look at your people, and if a person is, say, not fully utilized, or they need to be upskilled, or they need to really be in a different role within an organization to have, based on their skill set, those are all conversations that we have in that partnership approach, right? So the first rule for us is identify the problem, look at what we've got, and then work with you to lay out what we think a good solution might be. So that could look like, us providing outsourced accounting to your organization. It could be tightening your accounting processes. It could really be upskilling your people. And it could also be that, maybe everything's got to go. Maybe we need to get a controller in there that could really help build out a team, write down new processes, implement new technology, get the reporting right. We do have extreme cases like that we do have to come in and just literally, talk about cleaning house. And that does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. And then overall, I think if you think about it, from a partnership approach, it's also laying out the foundation for the future. So a lot of times, nonprofit organizations tend to have a long life cycle. And in that life cycle, it could be that, hey, we're still in a startup phase, but here's where we would like it to go to meet our mission. And a lot of times you have to lay that out. So it could be that, hey, I think we're going to be raising this much for in a grant, and then we're going to be doing this project. So it's not just about looking at solving for today, it's also about looking at solving for what really the goals of the organization are as well. So the value of sitting at a table with people that really speak the same language and understand your needs, I think we find that to be a great starting place for our relationship, right? So it starts to become scalable also, right? So as I mentioned, you could be in a startup phase, or you could be a full maturity phase, but the goal is for us to set the foundation in that partnership so we can continue to expand and contract as we need it.
So helpful. So many grants, the ERC, the PPP loan, so many things that have happened over the past few years have really created some wonderful opportunities, but a handful of challenges have come along with those as well. We've talked a lot about technology, and I will confess, when I was getting my accounting degree, I did not think that technology would have such a big role in what I do. So that shows that maybe I was a little foolish, but Natasha, you've really kind of led the charge in our group about technology. Can you share how we can leverage it more as a nonprofit?
Absolutely. This is my favorite question. I'm very passionate about technology. And back when I graduated college, I had a glimpse of technology in my foresight, but I did not expect the industry to go to where it is today. And it's just taking off, and it's really helping augment that staff constraint. So there's a few key areas that I personally believe are very important to nonprofits to consider around technology. Now, I'm going to just tell you a handful. My first one is around spend control. So we can put guardrails in place where only approved vendors get to be created in your system. So imagine one person coming in saying, I need this vendor to be created, another person coming in and reviewing that vendor and saying, yes, I approve it. Do we have all the information? Do we have the W-9s? Do we have the address? Do we have everything that we need for this vendor? And we can put that structure in place where that vendor doesn't get created until somebody says yes. And that also helps with your internal controls as well. So you don't have any scrupulous activity going on. And then as well, we can put budgets in place. You can put a budget attached to a GL account, a budget attached to a grant, so that if you exceed, say you have a grant for $50,000 and you're trying to spend something north of $50,000, system can stop you. It can warn you, it can stop you, or it can do nothing. So you have that control to say, yes, I want these controls in place. We even have built reports to show, here's my actual spend, here's my budget, by grant, by project, by program, you name it, it can be built. And that's what is super exciting. I get really excited, you can tell, about technology and what you can do with it, because it's super helpful. Now, my next is a shared chart of accounts. So many people come and they say, how do you solve for a shared chart of accounts? You have so many different things going across this organization. You can do it. And you think of it as the shared chart of accounts should just be your natural GL account. And with the systems that we use, we have dimension-based systems. So we're able to have that single GL account to be that chart, that GL number. And then you can have your restrictions, can't speak, in a dimension, or your programs in a separate dimension. So you can easily break apart what you need. But now, because your chart of accounts is clean and shared across all funds, you can get meaningful reports to see, how much did I spend on travel? How much did I spend on promotions? What are my memberships, and memberships by whatever your need? So that I find to be really exciting and powerful. As well as I just mentioned, because it's a dimension-based system, you can have that dimension for your restrictions so that it's no longer a daunting task when you have to complete your 990, because you know what are your board restricted activities versus your unrestricted activities. It's there, dimension-based at your fingertips. So really at your end, it's just clicking a button and producing a report versus having to go through all your GL accounts and go, okay, what's this? What did I miss? The system does it for you. Highly powerful. Another one is your grant tracking and your project tracking. So this is where, again, it's another dimension where and I think of I use the analogy, I put a bear hug around my grants and my projects. So imagine you can have a project for or a grouping for your grants. So now you can see who are your vendors associated to this grant, what GL accounts were hit associated to it. We do this very common for holiday parties. On a holiday party, you can then see who are your vendors, how much did you spend on catering, how much did you spend on entertainment, what was your travel costs for this. So you can produce, I like to call them little mini P&Ls by your project. So you can see the who, the what, the why, all in one area. And again, it's easy. You just push a button. You build a report once, you push a button, and you can use it unlimited for whatever you need. And that's where this story, I was talking to Emily not too long ago, telling her about one of my favorite dashboards. So my favorite dashboard of all time was for a nonprofit, and it told such an amazing story about what are the various projects, how much did they spend in a time frame, what was their budget, were they over or under. And so the real-time reporting that you can get out of technology by dimension is just, I was speechless. I was just, you could see the smile on my face, and I was looking at it, and I come back in this state of awe going, this is why I do what I do. It's just fantastic. So those are a few, but there's many other, I know nonprofits have a lot of pain points, and yeah, I could go on for hours on this very topic of how can we solve your problems and what pains are you happening and how can technology help you?
That's so helpful. So, I mean, we have talked about KPIs being so critical for all organizations, but nonprofits in particular. As you look at the 990 and really tracking programs, it can be so helpful to know not just once a year, but in that real time, what's going on, where do we stand, where are we not fulfilling our goal and our budget for the year. Well, I want to talk and pivot a little bit, and I'll kick us off here since I'm throwing this one in, but what about some of the successes our clients have had and how we've been able to work with them? I want to just share about one organization I really enjoy in particular. My entire family has been involved with education. My brother was a teacher. My mom volunteered, was a teacher. My dad was on the school board for the majority of my time at Kennedale. So that's always really fun to have your dad be one of the people governing the entire school district while you're in the school district. And so this organization came to us and said, we're really passionate about creating leaders in the community through education. And they had some specific goals in mind and some different programs they really wanted to track. And so we started with a good chart of accounts, but it became clear it wasn't giving that real-time look into how they were fulfilling each part of their mission. And so we pivoted the chart of accounts to make it a little bit more dimensional and to help the organization communicate well. And it's led to such important things, such as really being able to tell when they need to hire. It's led to important conversations about programs that are going over budget, programs that are being really well funded through grants in the community, versus programs that aren't getting as much funding in the community. So the community may not have as strong of an idea about what they're doing. This organization has grown tremendously over the time we've been able to work together. And really the engagement started with, can you help me get the QuickBooks file going and working? And it's pivoted to this relationship of a monthly conversation, oftentimes more. Where are we at on budget? How are things going with the different programs? How are we helping share information with the board, with the program directors all throughout the year? And we're taking a good look together this year about the KPIs we're tracking together and how our team can be more helpful for their team to have that information at their fingertips. I don't know if one of you wants to chime in with a success story you've seen with the organization and how you've helped an organization grow or change or relieve one of those terrible pain points we've kind of been talking about.
I will. So I have an example of occasionally I'll work with labor unions. And if any of you have seen the requirements on a labor union, it's intense. So this particular nonprofit that I'm thinking about, they keep their books on accrual basis as they should, which is great. But the requirement for an LM2 is to be reported in cash basis. So they came to me and said, we can't support the volume. And so can you help? So I worked with them and learned, I had experience with labor unions before. So we identified how much time are their people spending on just producing this report. And they had a full-time person dedicated to and primarily focused on just the LM2 reporting. So because of the volume of data, they were very large, and the volume of data that they would go through every month, this individual had to scrub it and modify it and put it into the right format so that they could produce this LM2 at year end. It was extremely time consuming. So we built their system so that the reports just automatically produced. Now we put strict rules on their system saying you have to follow this workflow, these guidelines. If you do that at year end, you just push a button and that LM2 report produces. And that's exactly what they did. And so at the first year of using the system in its entirety, and they came to year end, and that individual who spent so much time, modifying and tracking the data for this reporting, he no longer needed to do that. All he had to do at year end now was just review it and say, yeah, that's what we needed. And that's good. And now we can go take this data, and they had all the data that they needed in one central place to produce that government compliance requirement. So they basically freed that individual's up. His quality of life was better. He could do more interesting work for him, more meaningful, rather than just reviewing the history. So technology can change your life and add value to your life, and so that you're not doing the daunting task day after day that's really not benefiting the purpose of the nonprofit, but just a compliance need. And I, as a person who I like to contribute to organizations, and I always look at and see if I contribute, how much of my funds are going to go to administrative in nature or the good of the community. And so when I see those organizations who are putting so much of their dollars to the admin staff, I think about, stories like this of do they have a broken system, and how can you fix their system so the dollars can morph and go over to the purpose rather than just tracking data for compliance. That's my success story.
I love that. I love the fact you shared about quality of life. That's not something we touched on, but it's something we talk about a lot as a group. No one particularly enjoys just doing data entry and kind of elevating the team and elevating through training that we can provide to a team, or that we can take off a task that's time consuming and burdensome to improve somebody's regular work week is a really powerful option out there. I want to talk about the types of different organizations we work with. Nonprofit's a really big umbrella, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Irfan, will you share about the different nonprofits we work with?
Oh, absolutely. We work with a variety of public and private nonprofit organizations, anywhere from startups to maturity, like I mentioned earlier. Some of our clients are education-based. They could be faith-based. They're associations. membership organizations, private foundations, all the way up to presidential libraries. Many times, what we find is that when we work with family offices that have a nonprofit component to their office structure, it becomes a really good segue into our services. So, it could be all over, in terms of definition for nonprofits, but what we find our sweet spot really is around, the membership organizations, the associations, education, faith-based, like I'd mentioned, and it continues to grow in that area.
That's awesome. I'm going to lead us into one more question before we check the Q&A. Is there anything I haven't asked you today that you want to share? Is there anything that you think that's a critical point for people to leave with today?
I will say this. So in my team, I've got people, they tease me, they call me dad, right? So I've kind of had a dad moment here these last 45 minutes, seeing the excitement that Emily has and Natasha has and Danielle and just everybody in our group and how passionate we really are about what we do. And and we all come from it different ways, right? Natasha came at it from a technology angle, Emily in an overall advisory, tax, and accounting angle. And then just to kind of be an observer and see everything play out, it's just such a proud moment. So I wanted to acknowledge that and have that dad moment to share with you guys. The other, I would say, for the audience, it really is, I've done this for 26 years, and what I see time and time again is that that first call, there's always that hesitancy around outsourcing technology. How much does it really cost? It sounds like it's going to be too expensive. What are your rates? People always think that we're charging like the professional services industry might have done historically, and that stigma is just not there, right? When you call us, we're really looking at this engagement as, or this relationship as, what is the true value we can provide? Emily and I have been on a call recently where we came from that call saying, no, I think you really need a full-time person. There's no way, no matter how we slice and dice the technology, the people, outsourcing, it just is not a good fit, right? So I encourage everybody that whoever's been thinking about it, oh my God, it's going to be so costly. It's use us to have that initial conversation. Let's have that. Let's determine, is it really a good value opportunity for outsourcing or a technology? What you find more often than not is that if you get, it's almost like the SWAT team concept, right? Like you get somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. They come in, they're executing. You don't have a 3, 4, 5 month ramp up period when you get somebody new that's still trying to struggle through, where the folder is for this or where that. We don't really, that's not, we're coming in to solve a problem, and we've got a playbook that we could solve that problem with. So if you think about with better technology, you've got a already skilled team that we provide. We already know what good processes looks like, timeliness, accuracy of reporting. We know what that is, and when we're coming in, we're really solving for those tasks and those pain points, right? So if you can take that same budget that you would have to spend on, say, full-time FTEs, your supervision costs, and you reallocate that same budget to say, okay, how do I put this into solving for those pain points, but do it in an outsourcing model? We look at it that way. We're like, we know that we could do all the things, the right kind of things to make a successful relationship from an outsourcing perspective. And then we can also push back and say, you know what, this is from a controls perspective, this is one of those key areas that I think you ought to hang on to, right? So that's the conversation I invite everybody to. And we joke about this all the time. We always say, hey, if you feel any accounting pain, call us, right? So I'll leave you with that, is that if you're feeling any accounting pain, call our CAAS team and let's talk.
That's so great. And I think it is important to acknowledge we are maybe not the perfect solution for everything. And we are going to admit when we're not. So if your concern is, oh goodness, they're just going to try and sell me on something that I may or may not need, that should not be your fear. Our passion for nonprofits means that we're a good steward for you and for your donors and for your team. And that can look like a lot of different relationships that are very customizable. So we had one question pop up in the chat that I think is really important. Natasha and Irfan, I'm going to read it off, and I feel confident answering this question. And if y'all want to chime in afterwards, it's how is program staff engagement handled with outsourcing? This can be so problematic because we may not physically be on site. And in fact, most times we aren't physically on site with your team, and they can think, well, I'm not worried about what Emily's asked for because she's not here. She can't step into my office or cubicle and kind of check in on me. So how do you maintain that relationship with the organization? So this is unfortunately one of those famous accounting answers of it depends. In fact, I think you could sum up a 4-year accounting degree with it depends on quite a few things, but really this is based on a couple of specifics items to me. Number one, where are you in your life cycle? If you're at the beginning of a life cycle versus a more mature organization, it may require more or less relationship and constant interaction with our team. The second thing I think it depends on is the true assessment of what your internal team is capable of and what they are willing to do. Our team really loves to learn and grow. I've got a really big learning goal for this year with this group, and I'm excited about that. And some organizations are really passionate about upskilling their people. And some organizations have people who maybe they've been in the role for a while and they want to keep in the role they're in, and they may not be as excited about learning and growing and changing. So I think those are really kind of the 2 points where it depends. Where I've seen it lay out and kind of play out for organizations is a few different ways. One, we have, I'll give the most basic and I'll kind of go up the scale. So one is an email address that makes us part of your team. So it can be accounting@whateverorganization.org. And it's an internal email. It makes us part of the team. It makes them a little less willing or a little more willing to think to reach out to us because they feel our presence just in that digital capacity, which seems weird, but it works time and time again. The second thing is really that, as Natasha's talked about technology, I think sometimes you have to have someone come in and be firm with a pivot from the way things have been done to the way things are going to be done, whether that's strict on budgeting, chart of accounts, and expense management can be some of the things that are really critical. Not allowing someone to submit and expenses to be paid, but then not collecting the W-9, not understanding how that's going to fall in line with the budget. So it's kind of not a police relationship, but somebody who's willing to feel like the bad guy from time to time. The most valuable relationship I think I've seen with the team and where the highest level of engagement comes from is really a meeting that's set on a regular basis. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. It could go, if it's a smaller organization, to quarterly or before and after board meetings. And really that relationship looks like, okay, this was our goal and objective last month. We were really focused on how do we do better at tracking restricted grants and how they're spent down through the month. So we decided on X, Y, and Z were going to be new ways that we tried doing this. We've tried that, and here's what we've learned, and here's what we've realized is going to help us and not going to help us. And I think that frequency of meeting can be helpful from the standpoint that people are more willing to bring things to the table that have been bothering them. You can think that the meeting is going to be about budgeting, and then it turns into a totally different conversation because somebody's been willing to say, you know what, I am really frustrated with how cash flow management has been working over the past few weeks. We've had a person in the organization spend more than they should have, and that's put us all in a bad position. So we'll go different directions. I would say that's really where the assessment is helpful with you, where we can get in and say, okay, what is currently happening and what are we aiming to get at? And it may be one thing specifically in the beginning and then pivoting from there, or it may be just a total, we need to start from scratch and redo several things. But that's a decision we're going to make together, not separately. And then it is that someone at the relationship does have some sort of oversight role with our team. If we're coming in to be the controller, who is overseeing the controller function? If we're coming in and we're expecting to report directly to the board or the executive director, that executive and director and board of directors has to be involved with us. Anything y'all want to add?
Yeah, I'll add one quick thing to that. I think what we find with program staff is if you isolate the task that you need them to do, then it provides that clarity, and you may find that you may not need a full-time person to do that, or it might just be the cadence that Emily is referring to, is that we really need somebody possibly, just to kind of pick an example, somebody that opens the mail, scans that into our system as to what we need to do with it. Maybe there's correspondence that we need to know about. So we do need some sort of a liaison, whether it is technology that acts as a liaison or whether it's a person that acts as a liaison. So I think if we isolate that down to, okay, here are 4 things that we need somebody for, then you get that clarity, and then you can get the right amount of that person's time or the type of person that you're looking for. So we can define all of that up front when we're doing the assessment phase, like Emily mentioned, but typically that's a conversation we can have right off the bat.
So I'm going to pass it back to Danielle and let her close us out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emily, Irfan, and Natasha. What I love about CAAS is there's a fit for everyone, right? And the more y'all talk about it, it's every size company, organization, and your team really meets that, like at the client or the prospect at the place that they're at. To kind of Emily's point, it's like, you're never going to push anything that doesn't really, it's not a need for them. It's not going to provide them value, but it's meeting you where you're at. And just like every individual is different, every organization is different and needs something different. So I love that y'all talked about that. And if y'all need any further discussion, clarification on anything, just let us know. We're truly here to be a resource to you. Thank you again for joining us. Connect with us anytime, and we will see you next round. Y'all have a great day.